PJ here, the silverback from tacticalmonkey.net, and today I'm going to show you something that is quite often overlooked: magazine maintenance. You carry your gun around all the time. Some magazines stay loaded. You clean your weapon. You do everything else, but you very rarely take care of your magazines. Magazines are going to be critical in a dangerous situation, in a critical situation. It's a critical aspect. How many times can I say critical? Quite a lot, apparently. But yeah, your magazine, you keep that thing loaded and it gets dirty, dirt gets in there, and that's all kind of things that can lead to a failure and that critical situation when you most need the gun to work. So every once in a while it's good to take them apart, give them a clean. I'm going to show you guys how to do that today. So I'm going to start with actually have an older Glock mag in here. So just set that off to the side. So with Glock, this is a pretty easy process. It can be a bit tricky. First I want to tell you that this magazine's had a long life. It's about 15 years old. I got it of another two magazines that I got with a Glock 22, which was a service police issue weapon. This magazine obviously was one of three that spent all its time loaded all the time and was never unloaded. If you get close to it, or if I can get it close enough, you'll see that the sheathing on the inside, the metal coming through there, is kind of rusted. It's been exposed to water, possibly the sea, salty air at some point, and it's just kind of rusty in there. But I put a new spring in here, and this thing is as good as new. I already did put a new spring in. I'm going to take it out. I'm going to show you the old one. I'll show you the difference. So, with Glocks, there's a little hole in the bottom plate here, and first thing you want to do is take your punch. Doesn't really matter which punch you want to use. Push down so that the punch goes right away inside the magazine, and where it says Glock here, we have the flat end on this side of the magazine, the rounded end on this side. We're going to pull it forward to the rounded end. But here also there's a couple of little clips on the side. I don't know if you can see them or not, but there's like one there and there's one there, and so you need to depress on either side as you pull back, just by pinching with your fingers in order to get this off. So I'm going to pinch with my fingers and pull back, levering this and starting to move it. And like that, you can see it's already just started to pop off. So now I want to be careful, because I got a spring under pressure here and a floor plate that will come flying in Ghost Monkey's general direction with the camera if I'm not careful. How do you feel about that?
I feel risky.
Yeah, we'll get you a riot shield. So as I'm sliding it off, I'm just gonna cover it with my thumb, just to protect my equipment and Mr. Ghost Monkey. So there's the floor plate off, and then here's the next plate, which is typical me. I can't remember the name of it, but it has a name. And out comes the spring, and attached to the spring is the follower. You can take the follower off just by twisting the spring. And I'm not going to do that. It's a pain in my butt. I don't have to do it right now. Even if you were cleaning, you wouldn't have, unless you're changing the spring, you don't have to take that off. It'll take you about a minute to do and put back on the new spring. So, just as by way of comparison, here is the spring that was originally in that magazine, the older spring. It is, as you can see over time, it is compressed, and the spring has lost its spring. Now, if I put that spring back in the magazine, it would still function, and the magazine would be a lot easier to load than this one is. We know those fresh magazines can be tough, get your thumbs bleeding, but I like having a magazine that's ready to go, and that's why I changed them out. So this is not something you have to do every once, all the time, and just every once in a while. Like 4 or 5 years is probably a good time frame. So I keep these springs. It'll still work in a magazine, and maybe if I I do a lot of range shooting and I have some magazines that I don't keep loaded. This would be a nice have that in there. It's been easy to load at the range real quick. But yeah, so I keep those. Anyway, back to this one. So yeah, that's it. Clean out your magazine. You got the spring. Reassembly. Obviously, you want to make sure the follower goes in the right way. Pretty obvious. You can, if I put it in the wrong way, it doesn't go all the way up. It's going nowhere. So put it in this way, the correct way. Follower comes up into place. Fits right there. Hey, looks like a Glock magazine. So next part is I need to slide this little clap that the plate goes over. So what I do is there's kind of a square end to the spring here. If you can see that against my finger. And I just kind of slot the square end of that spring into the square end of that. There's a little dimple. This needs to be up and away from the magazine because that's what's going to hold it in place with the floor plate. So I just push that down, hold it all down with my finger, grab that and start to slide it over. And what really helps is when I do it the right way around. Alright. Kind of brace it against my chest. There we go. And if you're not careful, deaths can happen. I'm going to find that. Oh, there it is. Ghost Muggy's got it for me. We're going to do that again. So, hey, wear safety glasses if you don't wear glasses, because I don't want you to lose an eye. Yeah, so I'm going to do that once again. These things happen. I'm not embarrassed. Alright. So I just let that get a little bit too much pressure. Once again, there we go. And she pops in perfect that time. That is one nice little secure unit. It's ready to go, ready to function. We're good. Alright. We'll get that out of the way. Next, we're going to look at two very standard 1911 magazines. First one is the extended magazine. This is a Wilson Combat. Great magazines. I love them. I'm not going to preach on about them, but they are. It's my favorite magazine in the world for 1911 as the 8-rounder. And they also come with a little floor plate on the bottom of them. So much like the Glock, we're going to just push right into that hole that they've provided for us. And that floor plate slides right off. Now, also, much like the Glock, there's another little plate, metal plate, with that little dimple in it, right underneath. And we're going to just slide that out with our fingers, once again, covering the bottom of the magazine so the spring doesn't escape. Just slides right out, nice and handy. And sometimes you got to fight with the spring with a pin punch to get it out past the lips at the bottom here. But once you get it moving, it comes right out. So there you go. There's our spring. And now the follower will just fall out the top. So I've got a magazine now which I can clean. Doing this causes no damage or wear and tear on the magazines. Get it all cleaned up nice and reassemble that by putting the follower in first. My dog's growling. He saw a car drive by. He's a tactical pooch. He knows what he's doing. He doesn't mess around. We put that spring back in. Oh, my follower fell out. Now, as long as the follower goes in prior to the spring being compressed, you're all good. No one ever said it was going to be easy, but it's very worthwhile to do this. There we go. And once the spring makes it as far as the follower, it kind of holds it in place. So I don't have to kind of hold it in place anymore. It's not going to fall out again unless I release tension on the spring. So I'm just forcing that spring back in. Then I'm going to grab that little metal slide plate. Once again, the same as the Glock, you want the dimple to the upper side, pointing away from the magazine. Just hold my spring in place and slide that on. And that's enough to hold the spring in place. That's going nowhere. And then, last but not least, we're going to put this floor plate back on. Got to line up the other plate just right so you have room to slide that in. And we're going to hear that positive click. There we go. And it's in. Solid. So loving the Wilson Combat mags. So this is your Wilson Combat, more also very standard GI style magazine. There is no hole in the bottom of this floor plate, so you have to use a different technique to take this one apart in order to clean it, maintain it, and or change the springs or follower. So what we're going to do here is we're going to need some ammunition or empty shells. I just happen to have 4 45 ACP Hydra shocks sitting right here. I'm going to load them into this magazine. Now at this point, obviously, when you're working on firearms, safety all the time. I've got a partially loaded magazine here, so I'm going to take this 45 out of the equation. Alright, so 4 rounds is all you need for this magazine. 7-round magazine, put 4 in it, take your pin punch and the holes down the side of the magazine that let you see how many rounds you have. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, there's 5 of them. We're going to put it in the 4th hole right the way through to the other side. And what that's going to do is, as I take these rounds out of the magazine, it's going to retain the spring in place so that we can disassemble the magazine. So now that we actually get those out of the way, now that we've done that, if I can get to it, and this is where it's nice to have a couple of punches, the follower will come right out. There we go. Sometimes you got to hook it from behind the spring. If the spring's still kind of holding the back end of it up against this part here, so we pull that out. There's your follower, and now I'm just going to turn the magazine to a friendly surface, a solid surface, and remove that spring. Or you can do it with your hand. It's not going to hurt you. It mightn't hurt you. I just do it this way. So you heard that spring pop out, and there it is. And that is your 1911 standard GI style magazine disassembly. The floor plate on these is welded, so you're not getting it out that way. So this is the technique to use. For reassembly, very similar. We're going to put the spring back in. And then we're going to take our rounds, and without putting the follower in, we're going to put them in to the magazine. Now be careful with your ammo or your casings, whatever you're using to do this dummy rounds. Without that follower in there, they're not going to sit in firm, so you're going to want to hold on to them, or else they're going to fly out across the room. The last thing you need to do is hit someone with a round, even if it hasn't been discharged. So again, now that we've got those in there, I'm going to put the punch in right the way through so that it can hold that spring in place and retain it. Out these come. And now we're back in business. You can see that's holding the spring down inside the magazine, and that's going to allow me to get the follower back in. Now, if you can see there, the spring pushes and makes contact with the back side of the magazine, so it's important that this part of the follower is trapped behind the spring and doesn't go down inside the spring. Your magazine is not going to feed right. It's going to get stuck. You're not going to get as many rounds in it. So quite often I have to use my second punch for that. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to attempt to put it in, just kind of put it in at an angle and roll it over towards the back. And ironically, that's went in perfect first time. That doesn't happen sometimes. And I got to get a punch and reach down in under here, pull that spring forward to let that fall into place. But in this case, I didn't have to do that. So now I'm just going to hold my finger there and let that pop up. That thing is good to go. If you ever put together this style of 1911, oh, now you see I've made a mistake. And I'm going to show you this. I put the magazine in the wrong way around. You can see this spring. It's meant to be the end of the spring comes out to this side. That is going to get in the way, and that is going to stop that first round from feeding down the follower properly. So I'm going to just quickly take this apart, flip that around, put it back in again, and that's how you do it. So the open end of the spring should be under the front of the follower. And that's my bad, but I'm glad you get to see what happens when you do it wrong. And that's what we always say here at tacticalmonkey.net. We are not perfect. We are just gun lovers doing our best, figuring out how to do this stuff. We learn what we can. We teach what we can. We learn from you guys. So this has been a little bit of magazine maintenance, the Glock magazine, and the couple of different 1911 magazines. Thanks for watching. Silverback out.